If you're like me, you're probably still getting used to the new year. But if you look at the calendar, it's basically almost March, which means we're almost a quarter of the way done with 2022. This leads me to my next question of how many of us are still going strong with our New Year's resolutions that we set only a month ago? It can be hard to stick with those resolutions that we set when we slowly revert back to our old routines that we're used to. We are creatures of habit after all. You see, what goes wrong between when we set those resolutions and now is that many of us ever go so far as to establish a goal or an idea. But the key to success isn't about the goal, but instead about the process we take to get there, the system, because without it, we're basically just improvising our way to the finish line. You see, I'm not a life coach or a scientist or anything like that, but what I am is a human being. And in being human, I've had my fair share of failed resolutions and goals. And after every one of them, I've sat there and wondered why. What was I doing wrong? So in the process to try to figure out why, I gathered some information that I'd like to share with you guys today. You see, the key to success is about developing a foolproof system that gets you results again and again. So today I will be going over what habits are, how the system works, and how to implement it into our lives. So now we can begin to understand what habits are. According to James Clear in his 2018 book, Atomic Habits, an atomic habit is a regular practice that both small and easy and yet the source of incredible power, a component to a larger system of growth. It's important to realize that there's no such thing as a good or a bad habit, but whether or not it's an effective one. Switching to this mentality allows for objectivity so you can see and take inventory of your habits unbiased. This is important when you're first beginning to try and understand how habits work. Charles Duhigg in his 2012 book, The Power of Habit, goes over this idea of a habit loop. As you can see, the habit loop consists of three phases: the cue, the routine, and the reward. Charles Duhigg claims that by understanding this concept, anyone with a little practice and awareness can take control of their habits and therefore their lives. An example of this would be the cue, whereas you wake up in the morning, leading to the routine of you brushing your teeth, which results in the reward of a fresh breath. This reward of fresh breath keeps you coming back again and again, therefore creating that loop. James Clear in Atomic Habits develops this idea of habit stacking, which is basically when you stack one habit loop on top of another, using the first as a cue for the second. An example of this would be compounding flossing with brushing your teeth so you don't forget. So now that we have a basic understanding of habits, we can move on to the system. In Atomic Habits, James Clear goes over how important it is to switch from a goal-oriented mentality to an identity-driven one. With goals, you're racing towards a finish line, so what happens after that? After attaining a goal, it can be easy to abandon the habits you've been using to get there because you've reached that reward and ultimate satisfaction. When you shift focus to developing an identity, it becomes about maintaining constant growth where each day is a win. And then the competition between you and yourself over how consistent you are becomes a driving force. Clear creates this graph to illustrate why so many people might fail. With your eye on the horizon, it's easy to fall into this valley of disappointment. This is because growth is hardly ever a consistent process. Through the use of this curved arrow, he shows what the reality of growth might look like. By focusing on the system instead, you focus or you prepare yourself for the long journey ahead. Prepare yourself for the long journey ahead. With daily improvement, it becomes about 1% better every day. Make it so simple that it's impossible to miss a day. Instead of saying you want to run 5 miles a day, start by walking 10 to 15 minutes a day. Focus on standardizing before you begin to optimize, because 1% better every day is better than doing nothing. Creating a lasting habit is about creating a chain, and therefore, each time you accomplish a habit, that's another loop in the chain. You want to try to miss as little days as possible, but missing one day is okay. We are only human. Just try to hop on as soon as possible. So now that we've gone over the importance of the system and how our habits influence it, we can talk about how to implement it into our lives. Dan Knowlton on his bullet journal website talks about his own approach to habit tracking in his article, Intentional Habit Tracking. See, he emphasizes the importance of planning ahead. You want to reduce as much of the energy that you make in decisions as possible so it's easier to stay on top of your habits. Creating a tracking system that works for you is key. Everybody has their own preference, and so figuring out your own is important when you're first beginning. It can be as simple as marking an X on a calendar or making it as intricate as possible. You just want to find the motivation to stay consistent, and you'll notice that the satisfaction of writing every day in your accomplishment or in your habit tracking is an extra reward on top of your accomplishments. Another method could be finding an accountability partner. When there's someone out there you know who's keeping track of you, it's easier to keep steady and constant with your goals, or with your habits. So now, today we've gone over what habits are, how they play into a larger system, and how to implement it into our lives. In closing, I will leave you with a quote from Atomic Habits. James Clear says that true long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's not about any single accomplishment. It's about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. Thank you.